Good morning, everyone. National Post is reporting yesterday, and we're not going to look at this article, but January 30th at 7:45 p.m. Canadians stuck at coronavirus epicenter promised government help, but details not worked out. Okay, and yesterday as well, this was posted at 3:24 p.m. Different headline, same story. You can read both versions, but it's exactly the same story. I highlighted this here, but it's restated in here because it's exactly the same story. This one, the CBC one, adds in a little bit of don't be racist flavor. Yeah, right. But essentially, the story's the same. The headlines are very different, right? This one, details not worked out. This one, Canada negotiates details of airlift as WHO declares global health emergency over coronavirus. Weird, right? Just making it up as they go along, I guess. Here we go. The federal government says it is working out the logistics for a chartered flight to bring home Canadians now in the coronavirus-affected regions of China and pushing back against Beijing's policy of denying family members who aren't Canadian citizens permission to board the flight. Foreign Affairs Minister Francois-Philippe Champagne told CBC News that the government is negotiating with China about the airlift logistics, which include sharing passenger and passport information with Chinese authorities and securing permits to land the flight and clear various checkpoints in the lockdown zone so people can get to the airport. Quote, we're really down to the details of the operations, getting the names, getting the passports, confirming those who want to come, he told CBC News. I scroll down a little bit. Quote, our policy is to keep families together whenever possible, and we have raised this with the government of China. However, the Chinese policy is that only Canadian citizens traveling on their Canadian passport will be permitted to leave on this aircraft, says an email sent by GAC to a man whose family is trying to leave China. Champagne, who is scheduled to call with his Chinese counterpart for this evening, said he will challenge that restriction to protect family units. Quote, we're going to be pushing definitely because we want to be able to offer consular assistance to everyone, he said. Champagne said he couldn't offer a timeline for the airlift, but noted that it could be several days based on other countries' experience. Today, the World Health Organization, WHO, declared the coronavirus outbreak a global health emergency. What? Wouldn't they lead with that? Wouldn't they lead with that before doing all of the work of talking about bringing non-Canadian citizens back from the virus epicenter? Is this insanity? Like, is this... At what level does this rise to just incompetence? And at what level are there consequences for that incompetence more than losing the next election? Like, this is unbelievable, the inaction that has happened, the silence from the Liberal ministers. Everybody's just kind of smiling and saying, oh, we can't answer questions, right? Here's a Rebel News report that I'm going to put a link to. But it's wild. It is absolutely incredible. SARS took 61 days to get as many cases as Wuhan virus has now. Yesterday. I don't know how many it's got right now, but as of yesterday, there was 8,000 cases or thereabouts. And that's concerning. Half the time, the same amount of infection as SARS. So that says it's more contagious than SARS. And that's concerning because there hasn't been any kind of, well, here's a flight landing from China yesterday. There's not been any screening at Pearson, right? So this is new footage from, and it's only 30 seconds. It's people on a plane at Pearson Airport landing, and January 29th, 2020. And right? So there aren't screenings happening. The police and the security guards at the airport can't answer questions. Go and watch this yourselves. Somebody was upset that I didn't play the Rebel News article yesterday or the stuff about Ezra being interrogated. But I think that's a big enough story and they're a big enough news outlet that go check it out, right? Like I don't want to steal their thunder. Reporting on the news, doing punditry, is different than like reporting on hard news, right? Like I'm not a reporter in the sense that this is a news report. I just talk about the news, and the Rebel is. I think they're kind of a different entity. I don't know. Anyway, so I try not to they put YouTube stuff out there for their monetization, so I try not to use their stuff. That's basically what it boils down to. So I don't know, but it's insanity what's happening here. Like Mr. Menzies, he's asking the police here, are you guys screening any passengers for being sick or coughing or anything like that? And they say, we can't answer any questions. And he asks people coming off the flight, like, did you get here from China? And were you asked any questions? And they say, no, we were asked if we were in Wuhan, and we just had to say no, and it's fine. And so there's no reaction, really. Right? Here's back to the article. It says, somewhat alarming escalation. NDP health critic Don Davies said the WHO's declaration marks a profound and somewhat alarming escalation in the response to the outbreak. Quote, it's time for the government to get off their platitudes and generalities and start revealing to Canadians what their specific plans are. Right, because like Brampton Hospital is serving 700,000 people, and we're not equipped for a bad flu. In fact, just before this whole thing happened, Brampton, declared a state of emergency for a medical state of emergency because their hospital is already not able to keep up. So what are we doing? Back to this. No sick people on the plane. Health Minister Patty Haydu, thank you everyone, said Thursday that no Canadian patients who have contracted the coronavirus will be permitted to board the government-chartered plane, information relayed Wednesday by Canada's chief public health official, Theresa Tam. Haydu said none of the 196 people asking for help getting home are sick. She would not say if Canadians who are not experiencing any symptoms will be required to go into quarantine upon arrival in Canada. Right, because they haven't been quarantining anybody. People have been arriving. Back to this. The end of the article, I scroll down. Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet said the government cannot sit and wait for the situation to get better. Quote, I do not have the feeling when I watch the news that we are fully in control, he said. And since it's anything but a political matter, I think there's no reason not to fully disclose what would be a relevant, complete plan to anticipate possible risk. And I agree. Largely, it's wild that there's planes landing and security people not able to comment. And I mean, that's common, but it's interesting that they're just letting people into the general population arriving from China without any kind of screening, nothing. It's incredible. Moving on, this was posted this morning at 5:46 a.m. Van attack case returns to court Friday, and this is the case of a man who allegedly killed 10 people when he drove a cube van along a crowded sidewalk in Toronto is back in court today. And I just want to highlight this. The judges said that the case will hinge on Minassian's state of mind, not whether he did it. And we used to be a country that had the rule of law. And the rule of law is, here's the dictionary.com definition, the principle that all people and institutions are subject to and accountable to law that is fairly applied and enforced, the principle of government by law. Okay, so whether or not he was mentally ill when he did it, state of mind or anything to that effect, doing it and not doing it are aside. Now, you can consider that in your execution of the consequence for those breakings of the law, like the jury and the judge take all of those things into consideration. But this is different. This is different. And it's starkly different. We're slipping and sliding down a very, very, very frightening path in Canada. What was your state of mind when you committed those crimes? And that will decide whether you did it? Wow. Moving on to our last story this morning. I thought this was interesting. But this is a 2017 article, but Mr. Soros likes to give money to help lots of people around the world. He owns lots of NGOs, and that grants him a lot of power. And I've talked about him before, and there's lots of theories about the influence of this person, but I just wanted to highlight this. George Soros, Mastercard to partner to aid migrants and refugees. Billionaire investor George Soros will partner with Mastercard Inc. on a venture they said could help migrants, refugees, and others struggling within their communities worldwide to improve their economic and social status. And they go through the reasoning, etc. And it's whatever. But here's the reason I'm bringing this up. Yesterday at almost 5 o'clock, this was posted by the Huffington Post. Liberals defend $50 million investment in MasterCard's cybersecurity center. The federal minister of economic development has attempted to set the record straight about an almost $50 million investment the government is making to help MasterCard develop a cybersecurity center in Vancouver. This new investment made by the government will create hundreds of jobs across the country, in particular in British Columbia, Melanie Joly said in the House of Commons Thursday. Conservative House leader Candice Bergen rose in question period to call on the Liberals to reverse a decision announced last week at the World Economic Forum to have Canadian taxpayers shell out $49 million for the creation of the Intelligence and Cyber Centre. Mastercard is putting $510 million towards the project. Through the funding, though the funding is coming from the government's so-called Strategic Innovation Fund, which supports projects meant to, quote, spur innovation for a better Canada, Tories have already framed it as a handout to a hugely profitable company. The government of Canada has invested in a major new cybersecurity centre, which will make Canada world leading when it comes to countering cybercrime, ensuring cybersecurity, as well as developing new technology, Jolie said. I just want to pause here. Immediately when I read all this, I thought to myself, FinTrack, and how rampant and uncontrollable they're telling us that money laundering is impossible to stop, right? Like, they're spinning this story, investment, jobs. Do you know how much $50 million buys in jobs? Let's say it's 1,000 jobs, right? That's $50 million per job, right? And if it's 750, then it's slightly more, right? 75,000 or something to that effect, right? Like you can kind of do the math, right? So we're talking about directly subsidizing probably, quote, hundreds of jobs to the tune of this to develop these cutting edge technologies, which it doesn't work. Like the innovation and the push on the one side of things doesn't actually end up with the promise that they're telling us we're going to get, right? Like if you look at discovery math as one that has been easily to prove, PISA, the international ranking of math, science, and reading, measured Canada's drop in math scores, math ability, specifically Ontario. And Ontario in 2000 early 2000s instituted discovery math. Canadian students were tested in 2003, I think, or the early 2000s, maybe 1999 and then 2003. And the math scores were higher. I think it was 531 or something like that. And then every 3 years, it dropped. And it's been dropping since. And the problem is the discovery math. But they promised when they instituted this a better understanding of math for everybody, et cetera, et cetera. So they promised the world, and the results don't bear out. But it doesn't matter because the leaders in charge don't tell you that they don't. They say, we need more money for education, right? And I'm not meaning to talk about education today, although it is a hot topic. But I still think the public is not with the teachers. But regardless, when the government promises X and X doesn't happen, they don't usually suffer consequences for it. And aside from the hundreds of jobs, I doubt that Canada is going to be a leader in cybersecurity when we can't even get our money laundering under control. Oh, we can't execute these laws. We can't enforce these laws. How could we possibly do that? The criminals keep breaking them, but we're going to legislate more. What idiots. It's just so frustrating. So back to the article here. Let me find where I was. I diatribed for too long. Oh, right. Developing new technology. Sure, yeah, we believe you. Right. Back to this. New technology that can't be shared with the taxpayer for various reasons. For reasons, says Jolie. Yeah, right. Burgeon noted, back to the article now. Burgeon noted that since MasterCard's revenue last year was reported as more than $16 billion, they can afford to develop their own cybersecurity. MasterCard didn't need that $50 million. Actually, no credit card company needs $50 million from this Canadian Liberal government, Burgeon said. On this side of this house, we believe in job creation, Jolie responded before being jeered by the opposition benches. Yeah, because it's a stupid idea. Because government subsidy of GM didn't work. Right? So paying MasterCard $50 million to please set up your cybersecurity building in Vancouver, I mean, that barely gets a parking space these days, right? Here's their valuation for 2019, $16,276 million, right? Here you go, MasterCard, $50 million. You know, I've run businesses. I know people who run businesses. They don't get money like that from the government. $50 million? Man, it's obscene. It's obscene and offensive. We need to do it to stay cutting edge. You know what? If you maybe cut taxes for tech companies, if you allowed people to innovate, maybe the government wouldn't have to intervene in everything. And speaking of the government trying to stick its nose in everything. I'm not going to talk about this today, but this is very concerning to me. I posted this on CanadaReport.co. This is the the Globe and Mail reporting. Broadcasting report constitutes a stunning unjustified power grab. And basically, they're trying to say anybody who does news reporting or tries to publish anything in Canada or around the world for access by Canadians have to abide by their rules. And it's just a shocking overreach, except unless you've been paying attention for the last few years. If you've been paying attention for the last few years, it's an obvious evolution. And I'm sure there will be people who cheer it to stamp out those fake news and those people who are spouting hate or whatever trash that it is in vogue to say these days. It's just stupid. Absolutely stupid. This government is absolutely atrocious. And I mean, I was out with some friends yesterday, and how do you even start to have that conversation? They've weaponized even beginning to have that conversation, right? Like, it's like, oh, you're one of them, So jeepers creepers, what do you do, right? Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out the CanadaReport.co, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.